Hey everybody, it's Sunday, which means Games of the Week, and you know that if you've been a subscriber to this channel, where I take a look at the upcoming week in the NHL and talk about what I think will be the best games of the week. If you're new to the channel, you may not know that Sunday means Games of the Week, but it does, and I do videos almost every day on topics from across the NHL, so if you're a fan of hockey, you're a fan of the NHL, hit that subscribe button, follow along, check out my videos. Thank you. It means a lot. So let's get right into it. This week, starting with Sunday, today, December 30th, through Saturday, January 5th, we're into 2019, believe it or not. 2018 is almost behind us. 2019 hopefully going to be a great year for hockey and a great year for the NHL. Only one game in the NHL today, and it's not a game of the week. I think it's Vegas versus Arizona or something. It's not a game that I'll be watching. So, New Year's Eve, 12/31. New Year's Eve is actually a pretty good day for the NHL. There's a lot of games that night, and there's some pretty good matchups, as you can see. New York Islanders versus the Buffalo Sabres. The Islanders are a team that have put together a couple of nice wins the last couple of days. They've beat the Ottawa Senators, then they beat the Toronto Maple Leafs last night. They're playing Buffalo on New Year's Eve, and they're pushing for a playoff spot. They're pushing Pittsburgh for a playoff spot in the Metro. Buffalo just lost in overtime to Boston. They are, a good team. They're a team that looks to be a playoff team, but you have a good Buffalo team versus a better than expected, actually pretty good New York Islanders team who's pushing for a playoff spot. That should be a really good matchup. They're not in the same division, but still, that will be a fun game to watch. San Jose versus Calgary, also New Year's Eve. That game, first place is on the line in the Pacific Division. Calgary currently leads San Jose by 1 point. If Calgary wins that game, then in regulation, they'd lead by 3 points. If San Jose wins that game, they take over first place in the Pacific Division. So that is a huge, huge game between division rivals in Calgary on New Year's Eve. That should be a whole lot of fun to watch. Should be a really high-intensity game. Obviously, it's only the middle of the season. First place being on the line isn't like it's first place going into the playoffs on the line. So it's not like it's an end of March or early April game, but it's still going to be a really intense game. It should have a playoff feel to it. Both teams want to be in first place, so there's a lot on the line there. And then Winnipeg versus Edmonton. Edmonton is on a 5-game losing streak. I'm going to talk about them in the next video after this. They have got to get back on track or their playoff hopes are going down the tubes. Winnipeg, they're one of the best teams in the league. There's no other way to look at it. They're coming off a loss to Minnesota, which I think was a disappointing loss if you're a Winnipeg fan or a Winnipeg player, because Minnesota is way down in the standings right now. That's a game that the Jets should have won, and they didn't. So they're going to look to bounce back versus the Oilers. The Oilers desperately need points. Pretty much all the good things that they did under Ken Hitchcock up and before this losing streak have almost entirely been undone by this losing streak as far as where they've gained in the standings. So Edmonton desperately needs wins at this point. They have got to break this streak. They're going to get a chance to do it against what should be a very hungry Winnipeg team. So that is New Year's Eve. Good day for hockey in the NHL. Some really big-time matchups. New Year's Day, there's a few games New Year's Day, but obviously the big one, Boston versus Chicago, the Winter Classic. Normally a Boston versus Chicago matchup, cross-conference game, no rivalry between the teams, wouldn't come close to making this list, but it's the Winter Classic. And I don't care what anyone says about there's too many outdoor games or outdoor games aren't fun anymore. I completely disagree. Outdoor games are still awesome. They'll always be awesome. And the Winter Classic is the Winter Classic. It's a massive, massive event. And I don't care if there's one outdoor game a year or if there's 50 outdoor games a year. I love outdoor games and always will. And I mean, I wouldn't be against them playing the entire season outdoors. I mean, I know that's never going to happen. But that, I don't think there's such thing as too many outdoor games. And the novelty of it sure may wear off, but it's still playing outside. It's awesome. So, I'm a huge fan of the Winter Classic still, and any hockey game taking place outdoors. I think they should do more of them. They're huge events, and it's so much fun to watch. And quite honestly, hockey's more fun outside in the snow than it is indoors. So Wednesday, the second day after New Year's, we have a couple of really good games. Pittsburgh versus the New York Rangers. The Rangers have been surprisingly good this year for a rebuilding team. They've hung around in the standings. They don't look like a playoff team, but they're not a last-place team either. Then you have Pittsburgh, who's really, really come on in the last few weeks, excuse me. They've made a strong push. They've become a playoff team, and them versus their old rivals from New York should be a really fun game. I don't know what I'm doing Wednesday yet, but that game could be my live stream game for this week. That should be a really fun one to watch. Then also on the second, we have San Jose versus Colorado. San Jose again pushing for first place in the Pacific Division. They're getting close. Colorado's been slumping recently. They have not played well in their last 10 games. They're struggling a little bit. They want to get things turned around before teams like Dallas and Minnesota catch them in the standings. So, that's a big game between two good teams in the Western Conference that really would benefit from getting 2 points out of that one. So that should be a great matchup. Then we have the third, only one really good matchup on the third. We have Florida versus Buffalo. Division matchup. Again, Buffalo right there with Toronto and Boston. Florida a little bit lower than that. They're trying to catch up. So Florida desperately needs points to catch up to Montreal, Boston, Buffalo, those guys in the Atlantic. So a huge game for Florida against a division rival. That's a game that they would like to take for sure. For Buffalo, that would be a big win for them to keep those teams trying to catch them down in the standings. So that should be a really fun one. Then we have the fourth, which is Friday. We have Vegas versus Anaheim. Given where those two teams are in the standings right now, that is a huge game. Vegas has been playing much better of recent, and they've climbed into the third spot in the Pacific. Anaheim has been, at one point, was as high as third in the Pacific, but they've dropped down to a wild card spot, and they've been kind of struggling recently. They haven't been as good as they were to start the few weeks before that. So Anaheim's starting to show a little bit of a decline. Vegas is on the rise. This is a huge divisional matchup for both of those teams. And lastly, Saturday, January 5th, Buffalo versus Boston. If you watched Buffalo versus Boston last night, you know why this is a game of the week. Those two teams are about as neck and neck and tight as you can get in the NHL. They always seem to play close games. And, went to overtime last night with Boston winning in overtime, which was a huge 2 points for them to break their losing streak. They're right near each other in the standings. Boston, really wants to take that third spot. Buffalo does not want to drop down to a wild card position, so that's a huge rivalry game, huge divisional matchup, and should be a lot of fun to watch. So, not a ton of great games this week. There just weren't a ton of those high-end grade A matchups, but this is what we got. These are what I think will be the best games to watch this week. I know I will be watching a good number of them, and I hope that you guys get the chance to as well. So with that, like, comment, share, subscribe, follow on social media, check out offthewallhockey.com. All those links are down in the description. If you'd like to further support the channel, the links to our Patreon and merchandise store are in the description as well. Keep spreading the word about this channel. Let's keep this thing growing. Thank you very much for watching. Hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll talk to you guys soon.